Firing a party monster. Got here and some of the coils weren't working. So I put it in the test. There is some issue. Or it may be the low voltage that's not working. Yeah, okay, so it's a low voltage because the high voltage, like the flippers flip. But I think it's a high voltage that is working, the low voltage is not. Like, so some stuff is working, some stuff's not. We go up here. There was a couple fuses blown. There was this one here. And then there was this one. This one's for the flippers. So I think what there is there's a dead short for the high voltage that's causing this fuse to blow. I removed the auxiliary driver board from the game, and what that does is it provides rectification for AC to DC using these two bridges for both the high and low power coils, the 30 volt coils and the 50 volt coils. And if you flip this over, using my meter, I can test the bridges. And actually, just to kind of shortcut, the bridges tested okay. So these guys are okay. Now the other thing that this board holds is the tip 36 transistors. These are these large transistors. So these are pre-driven by the tip 102s over on the CPU board. So here's the CPU board, here's the tip 102s. What it does is it basically, you got a TTL chip that fires the little 2N4401, which then fires the slightly bigger tip 102, and then for really big coils it fires the tip 36 transistors here. So these like to fail for whatever reason, just because they're higher voltage devices. And actually that's exactly what's happened. If we, I can do this one-handed, I think it's this one here. If I put it on the red on the center lead, well, whatever, the red on the center lead, it tells me that this transistor right here is fried. I got, instead of getting 0.4 to 0.6, I get 0, which is a dead short. Yeah, right there you can see that that thing is just shorted. Compared to this one here, so you get 0.5. The play field, just notice that this coil here, see the two lugs for the coil, how they're like away from the metal bracket a good 1/4 of an inch. Look at this one over here. See how the lugs are actually touching the metal bracket? Look at that.
Okay.
And look how they're black. You see, can you see it? So they're dead shorting against each other. And one of these is direct power. So this is the direct power, and this is the return going up to the transistor. So it, you know, it'll blow a fuse every time on here at minimum, or take out a transistor, which is what it did. You just turn this thing 90 degrees, either that way or this way.
Because, the lugs themselves?
Yeah, you know, the whole coil you can rotate in 90-degree positions, except of course down. You can't do that because of the bend in the bracket. But that would solve the problem. But I tested the resistance of the coil. It's about 14 ohms, which is the same as this one. So the coil is good. It's just shorting against this bracket. And as you play the game, you know, the vibration will, every time the coil fires, you know, this metal slams into the stop, and it's enough just to cause the short when it does that. So it's pretty funky. It's not the coil, it's the bracket. Look at the distance between the coil stop and the edge, and over here the coil stop and the edge. There's a lot more distance here than there is over here. So they changed the design, and I don't know, maybe this bracket broke at one point and they swapped it.
Two things, so is it in that the distance between that piece and this versus that and this?
Yeah, yeah.
And
right, but either way we can solve it by just positioning the coil like this instead of like that. So I rotated the coil clockwise 90 degrees, and look, you can see right here the black marks on the coil lugs where they were shorting. And you always want to check the resistance, and you can see that we're at basically 14 ohms, which is identical to its cousin across the street. So that means that the diode on the coil, if there is one, and there actually isn't one, it's on the auxiliary driver board, but that tells you that the diode's good and the coil's good, or in this case just the coil. You still have to replace the bad transistor that got shorted in the process, which would make sense. So things are rolling backwards. Instead of, usually they fail going forward, the 102, then the 36. then that locks on the coil and the coil burns. This time it went the other way where the coil shorted, then took out the 36. I think the 102 probably survived, and the 4401 probably survived too. We have our new transistor installed. Also right underneath it is the diode, the coil diode that's mounted on the board opposed to on the actual coil. So we've replaced the tip 36. Now, if I will go to the manual over here, I can see that Q69 is what controls the right slingshot in the manual. That's the tip 102. So I want to test that before I turn it on, because you don't want things will cascade out of control. So this is Q69. This is the special solenoid section. And just using my meter, I can see that it looks like the tip 102 did survive the pain and did not get damaged. So I think we're okay there. Just had to replace tip 36 and the fuse. This is the main power fuse that then in turn blew the flipper fuse, and then that's why how they noticed. I don't think they noticed that the low voltage coils were working, because that would be like the slingshots. I think they noticed more that the flippers weren't working, even though a lot of other stuff wasn't working. The game turned on, and just in the music test, which was the first diagnostic test, because what that does is it turns on the flippers, and it also turns on the special solenoids. So here's our right slingshot that we just replaced those parts. And of course the left one works, and of course the pop bumper should work too. Yep. So we can see that that fixed our problems, because that dead short cascaded through and ultimately blew the fuse for the flippers, and that's what everybody noticed not working is the flippers. Screw the rest of the stuff, it's the flippers. So now we should be good to go, and playing Elvira.